My name is Vanessa Hale. I am 33 years old, and 3 days after my mother died, my older brother stood in a packed courtroom, pointed directly at me, and told a judge, "That woman is not my sister." Nobody laughed. That was the worst part. Nobody looked shocked either, because by then my family had already spent 2 weeks turning me into a rumor. The courtroom smelled like old paper, burnt coffee, and rain-soaked jackets. A ceiling fan clicked every 6 seconds above the judge's bench. Somewhere behind me, a woman coughed into a tissue wrapper she kept folding and unfolding like she was nervous to be there. I sat perfectly still. Navy blazer, white blouse, hair tied back. My phone vibrated once against my thigh. Unknown number. I ignored it. My brother, Aaron Hale, did not look at me when he spoke. He stared at the judge like he was delivering tragic news on television. "My real sister disappeared 13 years ago," he said calmly. "This woman appeared after our mother died, and now she wants the house, the savings, everything." A few people in the gallery nodded. Actually nodded. That was when I realized how far they had pushed the lie. The judge adjusted his glasses. "Mr. Hale, are you formally alleging identity fraud?" Aaron swallowed hard enough for everyone to see it. "Yes, Your Honor." His voice cracked at exactly the right moment. Practiced. Rehearsed. I watched him and suddenly remembered him at 14 years old, standing in our kitchen blaming me for a broken lamp he shattered himself. Same face. Same fake hurt. Same performance. Only now he wore a $4,000 suit and had a lawyer beside him. And our mother was dead. The lawyer stood next. Gregory Pike. Silver hair. Expensive watch. The kind of attorney who specialized in making ugly people sound respectable. He walked toward the bench carrying a folder thick enough to intimidate people before he even opened it.
"Your Honor," he began smoothly.
"Vanessa Hale vanished from public life for over a decade. No stable address history, no property ownership, no consistent employment trail. No social media presence until recently. No verified family contact. Then suddenly, immediately following Elaine Hale's death, she appears claiming to be sole beneficiary of the estate." He paused. That pause was intentional. Good litigators understand silence better than words. "We believe the court has an obligation to determine whether this individual is truly Vanessa Hale, or someone using the identity of a missing woman." Missing woman. I almost smiled. Because 13 years earlier, they were the ones who made me disappear. My mother's name was Elaine Carter Hale. She spent 27 years apologizing for men, first my father, then my stepfather, then my brother. By the end of her life, apologizing had become her native language. "Your father's stressed. Aaron doesn't mean it. Richard's just worried. Please don't make tonight harder." Every memory I have of my mother contains tension somewhere nearby. A cabinet shutting too hard. Ice clinking in a whiskey glass. A silence at the dinner table that lasted too long. I grew up in a 2-story colonial house outside Rochester, New York, where everything looked normal from the street. White shutters, trimmed lawn, American flag near the porch. Inside that house was a different country. Richard Hale, my stepfather, sold financial planning services to middle-class families. Retirement accounts, insurance packages, college savings plans. People trusted him instantly. He shook hands with both palms. He remembered birthdays. He lowered his voice when speaking to elderly women. At church, people called him solid. At home, he monitored the electricity bill like military intelligence. He knew how many minutes the upstairs shower ran. He knew how much milk disappeared weekly. He once lectured me for 11 minutes because I left a hallway light on overnight. Not yelling. That was the disturbing part. Richard rarely yelled. He preferred controlled humiliation. You're emotional. You remember things wrong. You always escalate. You make people uncomfortable. By 16, I apologized automatically even when I knew I was right. That was the system. Aaron adapted beautifully. My brother learned early that survival inside our house depended on alignment. He mirrored Richard's opinions, laughed when Richard laughed, agreed before being asked. Richard loved that, especially because I did not. The first real fracture happened when I was 19. Community college, night classes, working mornings at a shipping warehouse near Brighton. One Thursday in November, I came home early because the warehouse lost power during a storm. The house was quiet. Too quiet. Richard's office door downstairs was partially open. His printer was running. I walked past and saw papers spread across his desk. Retirement withdrawal forms. My mother's signature. Only it was not her signature. I knew my mother's handwriting better than my own. Elaine curved her E too wide. These signatures were tighter, forced, careful copies. I still remember the sound the printer made, that dry mechanical clicking. I picked up one page, then another. Then another. $18,000 withdrawal. $11,400 transfer. $9,700 liquidated from a mutual fund. All redirected into a consulting LLC Richard controlled. My stomach went cold so fast it felt chemical. Then Richard's voice came from behind me. You shouldn't touch things you don't understand. I turned. He stood in the hallway holding grocery bags, milk, bread, tomatoes, completely calm. I asked one question. Did Mom approve these? And for the first time in my life, I watched a man decide in real time that I had become dangerous. That night changed everything. Not because of the money, because I saw fear in him, real fear. Richard sat my mother and Aaron down at the kitchen table around 8:30 that evening. Rain hammered the windows. The dishwasher hummed beside us. I stood near the counter while Richard explained that I had been spiraling emotionally. He said I was paranoid, unstable, aggressive. Aaron looked uncomfortable for maybe 3 seconds. Then he folded. She's been acting weird for months, he said quietly. Months. I stared at him. He would not meet my eyes. My mother cried before anyone even raised their voice. That was Elaine's role in conflicts. Preemptive sadness. Richard leaned forward and took her hand gently like a grieving husband in a hospital drama. Elaine, he whispered, I think Vanessa needs help. Help. That word destroyed my life faster than any insult could have. Because once a family labels you unstable, every reaction becomes proof. If you stay calm, you're manipulative. If you cry, you're unstable. If you defend yourself, you're dangerous. I lasted 11 more days in that house. Then Richard accused me of stealing financial documents. The police were never called. That would have created records. Richard preferred cleaner damage. Instead, Aaron cornered me in the garage while snow blew under the side door and told me maybe leaving would help everyone calm down. Everyone. Not me. Everyone else. I left that night with one duffel bag, $640 cash, and copies of the forged documents hidden inside a winter coat pocket. My mother stood upstairs in the hallway, watching, not speaking. I looked up at her one last time before walking out. She raised one trembling hand against the railing, like she wanted to stop me, like she wanted someone else to stop her first. Then the hallway light clicked off. For years afterward, that moment replayed in my head more than any other. Not because she betrayed me, because she almost didn't. I disappeared after that, at least publicly. Not accidentally, professionally. At 21, I was recruited into a federal cyber operations program after a contractor noticed my forensic analysis work during a data recovery certification course in Maryland. I was good. Obsessively good. Patterns made sense to me. Digital lies made sense to me. Most people think deleting evidence removes it. Usually it just leaves fingerprints somewhere else. By 24, I worked contracts attached to federal investigations involving financial fraud, offshore laundering, and infrastructure breaches. I spent years inside secure facilities where phones stayed outside locked doors and entire conversations disappeared into NDAs. My tax structures changed, my addresses rotated, my employment records buried themselves behind subcontractors and clearance walls. To ordinary civilians, my life looked fragmented, invisible, which was exactly why Aaron and Richard believed they could erase me now. Because from the outside, I looked like a ghost. And ghosts cannot inherit houses. 2 weeks before my mother died, she called me from a number I did not recognize. 11:43 p.m. I was sitting in my apartment outside Arlington, Virginia, eating microwaved ramen over my sink while reviewing breach logs from a defense contractor audit. Her voice sounded smaller. Not weak. Smaller. Like illness had physically reduced the space her soul occupied. "Vanessa," she whispered. I froze. My mother almost never called directly. "It's bad," she said. No buildup, no softening. Cancer had already spread to her liver by then. Stage 4. Hospice nurses during daytime. Morphine near the bed. Aaron telling people she was responding positively. Richard smiling too much in Facebook updates. I flew to Rochester the next morning. My Aunt Diane picked me up instead of taking me to the house directly. "That man has cameras now," she said, while gripping the steering wheel hard enough for her knuckles to pale. "Front porch, garage, doorbell, everything." "Why?" She looked at me. "You know why." We waited until Richard left for a Rotary fundraiser before driving over. My mother was asleep when I entered the bedroom. Yellow lamplight, oxygen machine hum, lavender lotion smell. A glass of water untouched beside the bed. She woke slowly when I sat beside her. Then she cried immediately. Not dramatic crying, silent tears, the exhausted kind. "I tried to fix it," she whispered. I took her hand carefully because her skin looked paper thin. "What happened?" Her eyes moved toward the bedroom door. Even dying, she checked whether Richard might hear. That told me everything. "He knows about the will." A cold pressure settled into my chest. "What did you do?" "I changed everything in March." Of course she did. Quiet women survive by planning privately. "The house," she whispered. "The accounts. Everything goes to you." "Mom, he'll fight it." Not emotional. Certain. "He and Aaron both." I stared at her. Aaron, too. Something inside me shifted then. Not shattered. Locked.
My mother reached beneath the blanket with shaking fingers and handed me a brass key attached to faded blue thread. Diane has the box. What box? The proof. I leaned closer. What proof? Her eyes filled again. That I never stopped loving you. The locksmith arrived at 8:17 Monday morning. Diane got the timestamp later from a neighbor's Ring camera. White van. Monroe Security Solutions printed on the side. Aaron standing in the driveway with coffee in one hand and his mother's spare keys in the other, while hospice nurses moved through the house, preparing morphine schedules for a dying woman upstairs. That detail mattered to me. Not because of the locks, because of the timing. People reveal themselves most clearly when they think someone is already finished. Diane ended the call with the hospice nurse and immediately dialed Elaine. No answer. Again. Straight to voicemail. Then Aaron. He picked up on the fourth ring, sounding irritated, like we were interrupting something important. What? Diane put him on speaker. Why are you changing the locks? A pause. Tiny, but there. Richard thought it was safer. Safer from who? Another pause. Then came the sentence that changed everything. From Vanessa. I actually laughed, not loudly, just once. Because suddenly, I understood the strategy. They were preparing the narrative before Elaine even died. Dangerous daughter, mentally unstable, estranged for years, potential financial manipulator. By the time probate started, they wanted the town emotionally prepared to reject me before facts ever appeared. Smart. Ugly, but smart. Diane looked at me across the kitchen island. Her face had gone pale. She's still alive, she whispered. Aaron sighed into the phone like he was exhausted by everyone else's incompetence. Aunt Diane, Mom's vulnerable right now. Vanessa showing up after all these years has been stressful for her. I leaned forward slowly. Put me on. Diane handed me the phone. The room was silent except for rain tapping the skylight. Aaron? Nothing. Then finally, you shouldn't be involved in this. His voice was colder now, careful, performing calm. I knew that tone. Richard's tone. You changed the locks on a dying woman's house, I said. It's legally Richard's residence. No, I said quietly. It's legally Mom's. He stopped breathing for half a second. Tiny sound, but I heard it. Because people working deception always react hardest to certainty. You don't know what you're talking about, he said. Actually, I did. 3 years earlier, during one of my rare visits through Diane, my mother accidentally left property tax documents on the kitchen counter. The house sat entirely in Elaine Hale's name. Not Richard's. Never Richard's. Which meant one thing. He already knew he was losing it. And desperate men become aggressive early. I'm coming over, I said. No. Not angry. Immediate. Fear response. You are not welcome here. There it was again. Not Mom's house. Not our family home. Here. His territory. I ended the call without another word. Diane grabbed her coat instantly. I'm driving. The rain got heavier during the trip across Rochester. Gray streets, bare trees, water streaking across traffic lights. Diane drove too fast while gripping the steering wheel with both hands. He's turning people against you already, she said quietly. How bad? She hesitated. That told me enough. Diane, she swallowed. Church people are talking. Of course they were. Towns like ours survive on controlled scandals, not crimes, narratives. And Richard understood narrative management better than most politicians. By the time we reached the neighborhood, I noticed 3 things immediately. First, the porch light was gone. Second, the flower beds looked untouched for days. Third, Richard's SUV was backed into the driveway, ready for fast exits. Interesting. Diane parked across the street. My childhood home looked smaller than I remembered. That happens when fear finally leaves a place. You realize the monster needed surprisingly little space. As we got out, Mrs. Pollard from next door pretended to check her mailbox. She stared openly. Not curious. Evaluating. The front door opened before we reached the walkway. Aaron stepped outside first. Camel overcoat, phone in hand, jaw tight. Behind him stood Richard. Perfect posture. Hands folded calmly in front of him like a funeral director. No grief on his face whatsoever. My mother was upstairs dying, and Richard already looked relieved.
"That's far enough,"
Aaron said. Rain dotted his coat shoulders. I looked past him toward the staircase inside the house. "I'm here to see Mom."
"She's resting."
"I'll ask her myself." Richard stepped forward slightly, not aggressive, measured, always measured.
"Vanessa," he said softly, "your mother's condition is fragile right now. Stress could seriously impact her."
I stared at him. This man had isolated my mother emotionally for 20 years, had stolen from her, had convinced half the town I was unstable, and now he was talking about protecting her stress levels? Predators love medical language. Makes cruelty sound responsible. "I'm going inside," I said. Aaron moved directly into my path, and suddenly we weren't children anymore. We were 2 adults standing in freezing rain fighting over access to our dying mother.
"You disappear for 13 years, he said quietly. "Then suddenly act like family?" Diane snapped. "She's been family!"
Aaron ignored her completely. That hurt Diane more than yelling would have. Richard placed a calming hand on Aaron's shoulder. Performance again. Always performance.
"Let's not escalate."
I looked at Aaron carefully. Really looked. Dark circles under his eyes. Sweat near the collar despite the cold. Phone battery pack in his pocket. He looked exhausted. Not grieving. Managing. Big difference. Then I noticed something else. The security camera above the porch had been repositioned recently. Fresh screw marks. Angle aimed directly at the walkway. Recording confrontations. Of course, Richard was building evidence. Not legal evidence. Emotional evidence. Enough selective footage and suddenly, unstable estranged daughter harasses grieving family. I almost admired it. Almost. "Mom gave me a key," I said. Both Richard and Aaron froze. Tiny reaction, but real. I reached into my coat pocket slowly and pulled out the brass key attached to faded blue thread. The color drained from Richard's face first, then Aaron's. Bingo. They knew exactly what key it was. Richard recovered fast.
"What is that supposed to prove?"
"Depends what it opens." For the first time since arriving, Richard lost control of his expression. Only briefly, but I saw it. Fear. Real fear. Then the front upstairs window shifted slightly. Movement behind the curtain. My mother. Watching. Alive. Aware.
Richard noticed too, and panic hit him instantly. Not visible panic, strategic panic. The dangerous kind. "Aaron," he said calmly, "call hospice." Diane frowned. "Why?" "Because your niece is upsetting Elaine." I looked directly at him. "No," I said quietly.
You're scared she might talk." Silence.
Rain hammered the gutters. Aaron stared at me with open hatred now. Not confusion. Not doubt. Hatred. Because deep down, my brother already knew something terrible. If Mom left proof behind, everything Richard built could collapse with her funeral flowers still fresh. Then the front door opened wider, and my mother's voice came from inside the house. Weak, shaking, but unmistakable.
"Let her in." My mother looked smaller than death should have allowed. That was my first thought when I walked into the bedroom. Not fragile, not sick. Smaller. Like illness had been slowly erasing her from the edges inward. The oxygen machine hummed beside the bed. A lamp near the dresser cast soft yellow light across the room. One of her slippers had fallen sideways near the radiator, and for some reason that nearly destroyed me. Because it looked normal. Ordinary. The kind of tiny, unfinished moment people leave behind when they think they still have tomorrow. Elaine Hale lay against 3 pillows, wearing a pale gray cardigan I recognized from years earlier. Her eyes found mine immediately. Then she cried. Not dramatically, not loudly, just silent tears slipping sideways into her hairline. Richard stayed near the doorway behind me, watching, calculating, always calculating. Aaron entered last and closed the bedroom door softly, like we were all participants in some respectful family moment, instead of a quiet war over a dying woman's final signature. My mother reached toward me weakly. I sat beside her and took her hand. Cold. Too cold. "You came," she whispered. "Of course I came." Her fingers tightened slightly around mine. Then her eyes shifted toward Richard. Fear. Even now. Even here. That realization changed something permanent inside me. Richard stepped forward wearing that same practiced expression people mistake for compassion.
"Elaine," he said softly, "you need rest."
My mother ignored him completely. That alone shocked me. Elaine had spent 20 years bending conversations away from conflict. But dying people sometimes lose the energy required for pretending. Instead, she looked at Aaron. And what she said next cracked the room open. "Why did you change the locks?" Aaron froze. Not emotionally, physically. His entire body stopped moving. Richard answered for him immediately. "For security." "No," Elaine whispered. Her voice trembled harder now. "You were locking Vanessa out." Silence. Outside, rain rattled against the windows. Aaron rubbed his jaw.
"Mom, nobody's trying to hurt anyone here."
"You filed paperwork." Not a question. A statement. Aaron looked at Richard. Wrong move. My mother saw it. And once she saw it, she understood everything. The look on her face in that moment will stay with me for the rest of my life. Not heartbreak. Recognition. Like someone finally seeing the fire after smelling smoke for years. Richard's tone sharpened slightly.
"Elaine, this conversation isn't helping your condition."
Then my mother did something I had not seen her do since I was a child. She looked directly at him, straight into his eyes. "No," she whispered. "You aren't helping."
Richard blinked. Tiny reaction, but devastating. Because manipulators can survive anger. What destroys them is public disobedience, especially from someone they believed fully controlled. Aaron stepped toward the bed. "Mom, you're confused." And my mother slapped him, weakly, barely any force, but the sound still cracked through the room like a snapped wire. Aaron stared at her in complete shock. Elaine immediately started crying. "I'm sorry," she whispered automatically. There it was again, apologizing for pain someone else caused. My chest tightened so hard it physically hurt. "Mom," Aaron said quietly, "I'm trying to protect you." "No," she whispered through tears. "You're protecting him." Richard moved instantly. "Enough." Not loud, controlled. But now the mask was slipping. He looked at me. "This is exactly why she shouldn't be here." I stood slowly. "You forged retirement withdrawals." Aaron turned toward him immediately. "What?" Richard ignored him. "You have absolutely no idea what you're talking about." "Yes, I do." "Vanessa," my mother whispered weakly. But I was done protecting the room. Done protecting comfort. Done protecting the illusion that this family broke naturally, instead of being carefully dismantled piece by piece over 20 years. "You stole from her," I said calmly. Aaron laughed once. Nervous. Disbelieving. Jesus Christ. I looked directly at him. "You really never checked the accounts?" His expression shifted. That hit. Good. Because deep down, Aaron already suspected something ugly about Richard. People do not become blindly loyal without first learning blindness is safer. My mother started crying harder. Richard stepped toward me. "Get out." "No." "You are upsetting her." "No," I said quietly. "Truth is upsetting you." That was the moment Richard lost control. Not fully, just enough. His jaw tightened, his nostrils flared, and for one brief second the friendly financial advisor disappeared. What remained was a cornered man watching 20 years of narrative management crack apart in real time. "You've always been poison," he said softly. Aaron closed his eyes. Because he had heard that sentence before. We both had. Different wording, same message. The family works better without you. Then my mother whispered something so quietly I almost missed it. "The blue box." Everyone froze. Everyone. Richard's face emptied instantly. Aaron looked confused. I leaned closer. "What?" "The blue box," she whispered again. "Diane?" Diane stepped into the room from the hallway. She had been listening. My mother looked at her with desperate urgency. "Bring it." Richard moved fast. Too fast. "Elaine needs rest," he snapped. "There is no box." But panic had already reached his eyes. Real panic now, not performance. Diane stared at him for 2 full seconds, then turned and walked downstairs. Richard followed immediately. I heard his footsteps hit the staircase hard. Aaron looked between us. "What box?" My mother closed her eyes, exhausted, finished. Then quietly, "The proof." 20 minutes later, the entire house changed. Because Diane found it. Basement storage room. Behind old Christmas decorations. Inside a plastic, weatherproof container wrapped in 2 trash bags and sealed with gray duct tape. Richard came upstairs white-faced before Diane even opened it. "What's in there?" Aaron asked. Nobody answered. Diane placed the box carefully on the dining room table. Blue metal, rust near the corners, small brass lock already opened by my key. My mother had prepared this for years. That realization alone terrified Richard. I opened the lid slowly. Inside were folders, envelopes, USB drives, bank statements, printed emails, photographs, and on top of everything else, a handwritten letter. For Vanessa, if they try to erase you again. Aaron sat down hard in a kitchen chair. Richard did not sit. He looked trapped standing up. I opened the letter first. My mother's handwriting shook badly near the bottom. Vanessa, Richard has been moving money for years. I noticed small amounts first, then larger ones. Every time I questioned him, he convinced me I misunderstood my own accounts. I let him do it because I was afraid, not of losing money, of losing what was left of my family. But after my diagnosis, I hired a private accountant quietly through Diane. The transfers were real. The signatures were forged. Aaron does not know everything. Richard kept him close by making him feel responsible for protecting me from you. That is why Aaron repeats his words. He thinks he is saving this family. I am so sorry. I should have chosen you sooner. But I am choosing you now. The room went completely silent. Aaron looked physically sick. No, he whispered. I slid the accountant's report across the table toward him. 43 unauthorized transfers over 11 years. Total amount? $612,000. Some moved into shell consulting accounts, some toward real estate investments, some into hidden debt coverage. Richard stared at the paperwork without blinking, like a man watching his own funeral. Aaron looked up slowly. You stole from Mom? Richard finally spoke, and somehow he still tried to control the room. It wasn't theft. That sentence changed Aaron's face forever, because innocent people deny first. Only guilty people negotiate definitions. Richard moved toward the table carefully. I managed the finances. I protected this family during hard years. Elaine knew things were complicated. You forged her name, I said. She benefited from those investments. She was dying while you changed her locks. Silence. Heavy. Wet. Suffocating. Then Aaron asked the question that finally shattered everything. Was Vanessa telling the truth all those years? Richard looked at him. Not lovingly, not regretfully, strategically, even now, especially now. She was unstable, he said quietly. Aaron's eyes filled instantly, because suddenly he understood. Richard had never protected him. He had used him. My brother started shaking. Not dramatic crying, real collapse, the kind that starts in the chest before reaching the face. Oh my God, he whispered. My mother began sobbing upstairs. We could hear her through the ceiling. And for the first time in 20 years, nobody moved to comfort Richard. Nobody defended him. Nobody softened the truth to protect the room. Aaron stood abruptly and shoved the accountant report across the table. You made me hate her. Richard's voice hardened. Don't do this. You made me think she abandoned us. She did leave. You pushed her out. The scream echoed through the kitchen. Diane covered her mouth. I stayed completely still. That destroyed Richard more than yelling would have. Because narcissists survive conflict. What they cannot survive is calm witnesses. Aaron looked at me. Actually looked at me. For the first time in over a decade, and I watched the exact moment he realized how much time was gone. "How many times did Mom see you?" he asked weakly. I answered honestly. 32. His face crumpled. 32 secret visits. 32 lies. 32 times our mother chose silence because she feared the explosion truth would cause. Richard grabbed his coat. Nobody stopped him. At the front door, he turned once, still trying to recover authority, still trying to sound reasonable. "You think this fixes anything?" he said. No one answered. Because deep down, we all understood something important. This was not the moment the family broke. This was the moment the lie stopped working. Richard left at 6:42 p.m. Diane later saved the exact time from the security camera footage. Outside, rain poured across the driveway while his SUV disappeared into darkness. He never returned to the house again. My mother died 11 days later. Aaron cried harder at her funeral than anyone else there. Not because grief hit him harder, because guilt did. The probate hearing happened 6 weeks afterward. Richard still tried contesting the will, still tried suggesting manipulation,
Still implied I was unstable.
Then my attorney submitted the accountant's report, the forged signatures, the transfer records, and my mother's sealed written statement. The judge shut Richard down in under 20 minutes. By then, it barely mattered. He had already lost the only thing he actually wanted: control. Aaron called me 3 months later from a grocery store parking lot. I remember hearing shopping carts rattling through the phone. "I don't expect forgiveness," he said quietly. Good, because forgiveness was never the point. Truth was. "I should have checked," he whispered. "Yes," I said. Silence. Then, "She loved you the whole time, didn't she?" I looked across my living room toward the blue box sitting on the bookshelf beside my mother's photograph. Every letter, every document, every piece of proof she left behind so nobody could erase me again. "Yes," I said quietly. "She did."